What's up, everybody? Tom Pelissero here with Judd Zulgad. Shortly after the Vikings play the exact same game that they've now played 3 times. Are you expressing sadness this time?
Well, last week someone was mad at me because on Twitter I looked too happy after the Vikings lost. So I figure after they blow a 20-0 lead, I should look really depressed. Very depressed. And oh, by the way, I also watched that Gopher football game last night. And the Twins blew a 6-0 lead during the Gopher football game.
Where are you
but
going?
besides
20
that,
to nothing.
We're in great shape in Minnesota
20
sports.
to nothing at halftime.
How about those links?
And the Vikings lose 26 to 23. You had almost the identical recipe that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers played last week, which was once the Vikings go into their soft zone coverage in the second half, chew it up underneath. The difference is they also had Calvin Johnson, who made a bunch of plays when he was manned up, when they caught the Vikings trying to play some single safety, when they had man-to-man matchups against Cedric Griffin and Chris Cook. That's what they were able to do. And also the offense. The third quarter alone, the yardage difference was 190 to 6. It was a collapse on so many different fronts. You had penalties again. You had Kenny Anatalu taking a bad penalty. Chad Greenway, there was probably a bad call on the horse collar, but you had a bunch of things just going wrong, and the way that it unraveled couldn't have been a whole lot more similar.
And once again, in the post-game locker room, the difference this week was we heard they went in at halftime after being up 17-0 last week, 17-7 week 1, and basically said, we can't blow this. We're not going to blow this. We're going to rally together.
You could see a difference in the energy level and the attitude coming out of the half, but it didn't make any difference in the execution.
But the difference in the locker room, or the same thing about the locker room from week 2 to week 3, they have no idea what's going wrong. They have I do not think they legitimately have a clue at how to stop this train, and it's going down the track so fast now. It would almost be easier for these guys if they were just terrible and were getting blown out, but they're not. But the problem is nobody can put their finger on anything that's gone wrong because I think there's so many problems. It's a weird deal, but I'll say this. You went to the San Diego game. I did not, but the Tampa Bay game plan and the Detroit game plan in the first half were terrible. They were just terrible. So what I can't decide is this the Vikings really melting down, or is this NFL teams that are pretty good but not playing near to their potential after 30 minutes saying, you know what? If we try for these final 30, we'll be okay. And both of them have been.
I think a big difference, too, that you saw between these two teams is the explosive element in the offense. The Lions have it, the Vikings don't. And when you don't have that, you're going to see what the Vikings did today, which is 8 and 9 man boxes against Adrian Peterson all day. You can either try to run against it. They hit on a couple of plays. They had the end around Percy Harvin that went for a big game because they were stacking the box against Peterson. But if you're not able to make any plays down the field, if you have a quarterback who can't throw from within the pocket, it's so much different than if you have a guy like Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson's a unique sort of a player. He's 6'5". He has like a 50-inch vertical, but he can go up and get the football. They don't have anybody who can do that on this team, and that's a big difference.
Calvin Johnson is a freak, and we saw it on, 32-yard touchdown pass he caught, where he literally boxed out Chris Cook. That was more of a basketball move than a football move. Cook had no chance once he lost position there. Calvin Johnson was like the big guy underneath the basket. He boxed him out. Calvin Johnson is a great player who I don't understand why in the first half, I think he was targeted 3 times. How can you not just go with the game plan of, we'll keep anybody in that we have to protect Stafford because we're going to throw it to Calvin Johnson until these guys prove they can cover him, Tom?
Stafford still got sacked 5 times in this game, but finishes 32 of 46 for 378 yards, a 108.8 rating. And you see the explosive plays. They have a 60-yard pass, it's just a screen to Javid Best, but it's blocked well. You have, obviously the downfield plays to Calvin Johnson. Brandon Pettigrew has a 27-yard catch. You have explosive gains within the offense. The Vikings, their best chance for an explosive gain is dumping the ball off to Adrian Peterson and hoping he can run. They just don't have anybody who's going to blow the top off the defense, and that's why defenses are able to play them the way they are. Now, that still doesn't entirely explain the first half versus second half difference. It just doesn't. There's execution errors, but when it comes apart on some level, players don't have answers in the locker room, but you'd hope the coaches do. Isn't that the coach's job?
Let's talk about the coaching. Last week we talked about the lack of use of timeouts, right? It seemed obvious that they should have taken a couple timeouts during the Buccaneers' last series. They don't. The Buccaneers score. The Vikings essentially have no time left on the clock and the game's over. Today, 4th down and a long one. Vikings are up 20-17.
It wasn't this. It was
a long one. No, when they respotted the ball, it was a long, long one. It was almost 2 yards. They go for it after telling Ryan Longwell and the field goal unit we're going to kick a field goal. They take points off the board. The Lions go right down and get a field goal themselves to tie it. But I don't, once again, just like last week, I don't get it. It's not one of those coaching situations where, as they're doing it, I'm saying to myself, this is a good gamble. I'm saying this is a bad gamble. This might not work. And then you give the ball to Toby Gerhart, Tom. Explain the whole process to me. Because one, even with Peterson, I wouldn't have gone for it. but I sure as hell don't give it to Toby Gerhardt.
No, and that stuff's all based on tendencies and matchups and specific things that they think they can exploit. But what a surprise that the Lions' defensive line is able to cave the offensive line, that Anthony Herrera gets knocked back into the backfield. Yeah. You could see that coming. I can't question the play call as much as I can the confusion that was out there, because the field goal unit ran on not once but twice. They ran on the moment that Michael Jenkins was stopped because Longo had been told you're going to kick it. Right. Then they measure, and those guys go out again. You see the offense waving them off the field. I asked Leslie Frazier specifically, I said, can you clarify, was it your decision or did the offense wave them off the field? He said, no, it was nothing like that. That was our call. I'm not entirely convinced. I look at that situation and the way it played out, and I think that if you had the offense who just had come off the field, it might have been a little bit different. Something weird was going on there, to say the least.
Yeah, the whole thing was weird. But once again, as a fan or as a media member, there are situations where you sit there and you think to yourself, this is a pretty complex situation. I don't know what I would do. Timeouts that happens, fourth down that can happen. But the last 2 weeks, the situations I think have been crystal clear. You got to use your timeouts. And on that fourth down, with as long as that was, when you saw them respot that ball, that's when I said, you know what, you can't do this. You can't go for it. You've got to take the points. Because the momentum was shifting enough by then that you knew if the Lions got that stop, which they did, it could totally go the other way, and it did.
And they never made a game-changing play. Never in that entire second half, and Leslie Frazier pointed to that. You never had a time when they really stepped up and stemmed the tide. Yeah, they kept the Lions to a couple of field goals, but you're able to get some pressure. What we've seen, too, the second half of these games is every offense has gone to basically their third down stuff on first and second.
And it works.
It's all quick drops, quick hitting passes, take it underneath, make them try to tackle you. Yeah, they dropped back a few times, 7-step drops, and they threw the ball over the top, but that was only in specific situations where they saw the Vikings had a single safety and they thought that it could exploit it. When you go to that quick passing game, you keep the pass rush at bay, and they're just chewing them up.
And you tire out the defense. And remember, Kevin Williams, for instance, back today, missed the 2 games because of the suspension, has the bad foot already. He played a ton of snaps. They said they were going to monitor his snaps. I think I had him out for about 2 series total. He played a ton of snaps. And what happens is the second half, the Vikings offense starts to struggle, so they're off the field a lot quickly. All of a sudden that defense has to play a lot. That defense is already challenged in some areas. So yeah, you've got an entire mess here. I don't know what the Vikings do about it. And in all honesty, as I was saying last week, I'm not sure this loss is the worst thing in the world. I think this organization needs to take a really long, hard look right now at where they're at and make some tough decisions on who should play and what direction they want to go in. Because you know what? If they were 3-0, I would still say that they were masking a lot of problems. The only thing is now, you look at them at 0-3, they've blown all these leads. They aren't masking any problems. Ultimately, long run, it might be the best thing for these guys.
They're 0-3 now. Leslie Frazier said not considering a quarterback change. It's not even part of his thought process at this point. And I agree with that because you're playing in Arrowhead Stadium next week, Kansas City. It's a tough place to play. It's very loud. Even that depleted Chiefs team, you know that they're going to come after whoever's out there. If you fall to 0-4, do you have to consider it? Do you have to consider doing something different? When you have a quarterback, it's not as though McNabb's playing at a high level right now. He has been below average 3 consecutive
He's
weeks.
the same guy we saw in Washington, by the way. The guy that we saw, we both sat at that game in Washington last year and said, this guy's done. This is the same guy. There's no change. I think you put Christian Ponder in, and you're going to have to trust the coaches on this, so this might be a tough call, but you put him in when you feel he's ready. I don't think you put him in a second before you feel he's ready. This, to me, is going to be a lost season. If McNabb has to take the beating for it, then so be it. If I'm the Vikings, I want to play Ponder, but it all is predicated on when you think Christian Ponder can play. It's not predicated on can we win this game or that game, or McNabb's so bad we've got to get him out of there. Every move you make, and I think they can make a few moves with young guys, not just with McNabb. Every move you make, in my opinion, has to be based on how ready you feel the young guy is to step in.
Leslie Frazier says he's not throwing in the towel. That's what he told his team after the game.
That's going to be a
tough,
there's my figurative towel.
It's going to be a tough sell going into this week. He's Judd. I'm Tom. Full coverage at 1500ESPN.com. See ya.